So there we have it. Okay, this is the soprano line. Okay, now I'm going to put down the bass line. So can you tell me the notes of the bass line, Mitu?
B,
B,
A, B.
A, then?
Sorry. B, C, B, A.
I was wondering. I said,
Sorry.
ooh. I was looking at that and saying, really? A G and an A together on a weak beat? And then?
B,
B,
A, then G.
yeah. So, and then a G. I'm going to write it this way. So, a nice minimum. And then, Antoine, you can give me the alto.
So E,
No, you can give me in French mi,
Ré,
ré,
Mi,
mi,
Ré,
ré,
Mi, Fa, Sol.
yeah, mi,
Roche.
fa, yeah. Beautiful. Wonderful. And then, Shalini, you want to give me the, do you have the tenor at all?
Not at all.
And so I will go back to me too for the tenor.
B,
Yes.
B, A,
So, sorry, B,
B,
B
A.
again.
8.
B, A,
No. B, A has the 8's on the first beat. Is it correct?
Yes.
Oh,
You can erase this B, it's not here.
B, A on the first beat. 8.
B, A.
Then G,
Yeah.
A,
Good. G,
A,
A,
8.
8. Okay.
B,
Yeah.
A,
A.
yes, I think.
Wait.
C,
Oh,
And?
C, D.
What do you mean?
Instead of the A, C.
yeah.
C and B.
And B?
D.
D. Okay. So you didn't get that, huh? Later you had problems?
Yeah, I went back to A.
All safe. Now, you see how neat this is? And this is my rough, okay? So just please, I'll tell you one thing. Try and be as neat as possible when you're writing music for yourself, because I assure you, when you, after a few years, you go back to what you wrote, you want to be, that it's clear for everyone. And editors had a nightmare already in the past to copy down and to print music. Still today we have, even from 200 years ago, people who are going back to the manuscripts and revising everything and saying, oh, but that looks like this note, it could have been that note. Very often the editors, because they knew this type of sound, they were correcting, they knew more or less what that note could have been. And that's actually where they went wrong, because very often the composers that they were printing were very much more advanced and did notes that were not so much accepted in the period. And so there's a lot of spiciness removed from those musics that actually now there's, I remember there's from the collections of Chopin, for example, for piano, there was Pollini saying that he was going to do another recording of them again with the original notes that Chopin meant, which means that a lot of people still play what the editors corrected, which is not what could have been. So this is as far as the chorale goes, right? And I'm not sure whether we had a look a little bit at the musical lines and looked at the way they move, and a little bit on you didn't write, and maybe we didn't. So I'm just going to say, for those of you who are starting this, don't be scared at what is happening here, because as I said, there's a piece of cake for everyone. Nobody's left out, and everybody gets whatever they can eat. Okay, whatever you can bite, you're going to get it. So if sometimes I say things that seem a bit far off, you can stop me and say what it is, and maybe I'm just saying it for those who can understand, and I can explain it in better ways so that everybody understands. Now there's another thing here. You can see, if you're not very used to notation, this notation, you're used to this notation a little bit. What instrument do you play? Because
Piano.
you do play the piano, okay. So good. So you're used to the grand staff. This is the grand called the grand staff. So you are okay with the notes here and here. So you know that that's a mi and si, do, si, la, sol. Good, good. That is good.
Basically, it takes a bit longer to read.
Yeah, because you're not used to it. So I did explain that once. You just have to think of it as a continuation of the lines with this line, which is this line here. So these two lines are the same. Okay, so there's a middle do, a middle C line, which is a transparent line that imagine that it would be here in the middle, separating the two. And so whatever, so for example, this note is already here. You got it?
Yeah.
Because it's above the line, which would be this line here.
Right.
So this line and this line connect. So it's basically a 11-line graph.
Yeah.
You have to know how to read this graph of 11 lines. I find this notation very good for a lot of musics in the world. I think it's a wonderful notation because it's very graphic. Even in space, you have time that is very well measured. So it's a very beautiful notation. If you were to take just a scientific graph of sounds, it would be very similar to this. Very similar to this. So, but here it's even easier for us to see than a graph that just doesn't have because here. So it's very nice, and what is not very good about this is that you never know where those half steps are and where you have those full steps. So this is the problem here, because from line to space and space to line and line to space it seems all equal, but they are not all of the notes are the same distance apart. So that's what gets a little confusing. But it's very good for modal tonal music. This is wonderful. So here we have this. So just to analyze this, we end here with what seems quite a shock from a key that seemed to start in a gloomy mood, right? We end with something that is bright. Suddenly it brightens up, and it brightens up because here we have what sort of chord do we have here? So we have a G here, so we have a G, we have a D, and here we have, what are these two, Chandresh?
G and B.
B. So G and B. Basically, the G we have it already, so it's G, D, yeah, G, B, D, right, would be in the order, G, B, D. So G, that would be the order. So GPT is the chord of G major, okay? So we end with a G major chord, and that's what is so beautiful about this. It's just how right, so beautiful. And if you remember well from the scale, we are in the relative, in the major of this, the relative. So this is the brother, that was the sister. Okay, so we are now in the house of the brother. We started in the house of the sister, we modulated out, and we really conclude here. It really feels like an arrival point. So in the relative major of that. Okay, beautiful.
But since the second chord, we are already in a...
Yes, yes.
Already some major.
Yes, but here we yeah, because we are, but we have here Do major and yeah, so we have, then we have an A minor here.
Yes.
Okay, but here already. There's another thing that I want to show you is something very, very, very common. Is this here, this motion, this type of motion when you see Sol La Si and Si La Sol, yeah, G A B, B A G. This is what we call the, yeah. So it's a cross contrary motion, right? Exchange, right? So the voice exchange, the voices. That's beautiful. That ends it, and that's what a voice exchange here. So here, and notice that this seems nothing to happen here, right? That's again. So it's made of two very different parts. One where it seems to be static. Look, you know, can you see the drawing that it creates? We have this, and we have this, and here we just have this. So basically that's the drawing, right? We go in and then it goes this and it does that. It comes back to what it was here. and if you hear it, it's exactly that, no? So, right? And then here it's different, right? Huh? You see? So there are two different movements. This is one where nothing seems to move out, and suddenly here it just moves out and opens. Okay. With this voice exchange, this is all the lines going into direct motion, right? All moving upwards. This is the only one moving downwards. Okay. So, two types of motions that to extend the chord. This is a way to extend your music, where without going really out, you're still always there, and you're going like that, and you're coming back here. And then the other one is really moving out of it. So this is something you could think of when you're creating those little tunes. How you can create something that is motion, but you're not really moving out, and suddenly here there's motion, but it's really going somewhere else. So these are two things that you can do in compositions, in the composition. Basically, this is the only two things you can do. Either you move around whatever you are, or you're moving somewhere else. And this is exactly one way of doing it. What is also very good. So let's look at this here. Moving in the same space, I think it's very easy to do. What is very difficult to do is really moving out. Because you'll notice what is happening here. There is this motion. It's a stepwise motion up and down, down and up, stepwise motion, and one note remaining the same. Remember this relation between notes, we call it oblique motion, is when one voice is on the same note and the other is moving around. So here there's oblique motion against in oblique motion against the soprano line. Okay? These ones are in parallel motion, and these are in contrary motion. What we have to worry about is how this parallel motion is created, because that is a little bit dangerous sometimes, you know. So you see the interval here. If we were to analyze these intervals, Mitu, could you tell me right away what we have there between alto and bass? Yeah, tenths. These are the beautiful tenths, which are the multiple of thirds. And thirds are a way you can move anywhere in a very melodious way. You know, two voices, and this is very often used in pop music and so on. Just thirds above the melody it's just wonderful. So whatever melody you have, if you do, you know, just you're beautiful, or even and even below. So you create this. It's thirds are very motion oriented intervals, and its opposite, the inversion of it, which is the sixth. The third inverted is the sixth. So if you are doubtful about that, C to E, the third, C D E, and E to C above, E F G A D C, it's a sixth. Okay, and so it's the same way again. If I do, now I'm going to play it sixth. You see how beautiful it is, or the sixth below. You can always be sure that that those are moving. That's a way of moving around. So here you have those thirds, and here a contrary motion. What do we have here? How do we move out? So what are the intervals here? So let's do soprano and tenor. Soprano and tenor. So this is something that I've been asking people to get familiar with. How to see the intervals, okay? So basically that would be a 5, and this is above a 5, so it's a sixth, right? So this is a sixth. This one, it's stepwise motion up, so you can assure also C to A another sixth, and D to B another sixth. Okay. Then you see again movement in sixth, wonderful. And yeah, and here.
But the C sol is a 6, but the Do La is minor 6.
It doesn't matter major or minor 6.
It's
There does no.
an augmented 6.
No. There is never going to be an augmented 6 because if I'm only using the scale degrees of the white keys, whichever scale.
But from the G to the A there is one full tone, and from the B to the C there is half tone.
Yeah, so you have minor and major. You have minor and major, but it doesn't matter minor and major because as long as you are in the scale degrees, and here we are. You see, there's no sharps and flats, no accidentals. Ni bemol, a dièse. Whenever it's not any accidentals, and we are in what we would call the white keys. If your white keys, whatever thirds or whatever sixths you play on the white keys, it's always going to be good, whether it's minor or major. You never have the augmented, as he was saying. That could have happened. And between these two voices, you can see what we have is B to D, so B, C, D, third, and this one, E and exactly a third. Now here it moves up, and so the third is not anymore between these two voices, but between these two voices. Okay. Anyway, yeah, exactly. That's a fourth, but it's a type of movement that goes very nicely. So anyway, this is just beautiful to see how you can create motion between the parts. Okay, this is a way to do it. Notice how the sixths are the ones, or the thirds, and here the tenths. Okay, the tenths are the ones that rule. So tenths, thirds, sixths are the ones that rule motion. That is in the same direction. That's a happy walk in the woods of two melodic lines whenever they move in thirds, sixths, and tenths. Okay, wonderful. Okay, I think that's good for now.